mentioned in your book Ted Link, I think was an investigative reporter.
I did. That's a good.
Did you know him?
Oh, very well.
And I guess he had all kinds of information.
Ted Link was a Post-Dispatch reporter. When I went to work for the Post, I got out of Mizzou in 1962. Ted Link was one of the old investigative reporters, and he had seen the other days. But Ted Link was a fantastic, was one of the best investigative reporters in American journalism. Ted Link was brought in as early on back in the days of the Lindbergh kidnapping. Ted Link took a leave of absence from the Post because federal authorities in New Jersey asked him to help him investigate the kidnapping that eventually led to the arrest and execution of Bruno Hoffman. Ted Link was involved in other, at times he would be borrowed by law enforcement agencies to help in big-time investigations. He was considered, although working for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ted Link was considered really one of the top 5 investigative reporters in the country. And like when the famous Kefauver Committee in 1950 went across the land doing the big organized crime hearings in St. Louis and other cities, most of the research, more of the research was done by Ted Link than by any other individual. And Ted Link was Ted Link got to be very close to the Sheltons. You know, in spite of what you hear or what you want to believe or don't believe, newspaper reporters do take sides. They like to pretend they don't, but they do. Now, it's more obvious with some than others, okay? But Ted Link clearly liked the Sheltons, and the Sheltons obviously liked Ted Link, okay? So when for example, when after Carl was assassinated in 47, then Bernie was assassinated up at Peoria in 1948, a year later, Ted Link actually was working with Big Earl and other top Shelton lieutenants to try to find the killers and dole out penalties. How's that? And Ted Link was so close to
a very important role in the corruption that was going on between the gangsters and
that's right. Ted Link was so close to Big Earl Shelton that the authorities in Peoria, who were culpable, they themselves were criminals, had a grand jury indict Big Earl and several other Shelton lieutenants and a fourth person, Ted Link. Ted Link was actually indicted up in Peoria for conspiracy in being so close to the Sheltons. But of course, there was never any trial because they were political indictments and they were thrown out and so on. But the Shelton book covers in great detail, and Heron appears early in the book, obviously, with the war between the bootleggers and the Ku Klux Klan, and as you all know, Heron was a focal point of that bloody situation, and there were hostilities between the Klan and vigilante groups and the bootleggers in other parts of the state, but it was more violent in Heron, and it was more bloody in Heron than in other areas, even more so than East St. Louis and so on, and that was just the way it was. And so Heron, of course, plays a major role in the early pages in the Shelton book. And then the last part, of course, is Peoria, where the Sheltons were invited into Peoria, actually, at the start of World War II. Peoria was extremely wide open, and the Sheltons were invited to come into Peoria when the Capone organization out of Chicago made a move to take over Peoria. The local crime lords in Peoria didn't want to come under the wing of the Caponites, and they invited the Sheltons, who had been kind of semi-retirement in the late 1930s, to come in and protect Peoria from the Caponites, which they did. And then the Sheltons eventually, in the war, took over Peoria. And that's where I think on the back of the cover I say that, you know, you couldn't, during World War II, you couldn't hardly spit on a sidewalk in Peoria without permission from a Shelton. And the main one was Carl Shelton. And that was the last big hurrah for the Sheltons in Peoria during World War II. But in doing these books, whether it's on a governor or on a major gangster family, you know, you've gotta, to get into depth, you've gotta have someone on the inside who will talk to you, someone who will give you beyond the norm in order to make the book interesting and try to make the book special and make the book worthwhile for folks interested in reading it. And I already indicated a couple of persons on the Shelton book, namely the nephew down in Florida, who was fantastic because he had really grown up with Carl Shelton being his surrogate father. And then we get to the Black Charlie book here. And with the Harris book, people, again in Wayne County, were very, were somewhat cooperative. The thing with Harris only died in 1988. Now, that's not that long ago when you're talking about